Tonight on Ground Crew Command Radio, is it true? Is it really real? Has Russia and Japan made their big move with actually nationalizing their central banks? And a lot more other signs of the breakthrough being here and now. And of course, a full analysis since the big January 10th, 11th and 12th astrological and energetic events of January 2020. This really is the activation of the age of Aquarius, and you and I are leading the charge, plus so much more. This is the Unknown Light Warrior. You're listening to Ground Crew Command Radio. We're back. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to your loving servant, the Unknown Light Warrior. Well, the much anticipated, and many people have been waiting for what the heck is going on. What were the real results of the huge astrological and energetic events of the 10th through to the 12th of January, the age of Aquarius activation. Once again, a big salute to Cobra for calling for the, I suppose, the most widely known and participated mass meditation of that 3-day period, being the age of Aquarius activation. Of course, we here at 144K were busy all those 3 days. And boy, there were tears flowing with the 144K mass meditation on Sunday, the 12th. And yeah, that was profound. We're actually going to hold on to the recording of that one because, yeah, that was quite an experience. You can listen to the recording of that. I'm pretty sure it's at the 144K members area. And boy, oh boy, it's been rough, and I'll explain why shortly. Cobra's report 2 days ago explains the basics of it, explains a lot of it, but certainly not all of it. And I'm going to get into some critical points. I'm going to fully explain those the bullet points in the post and email broadcast sent out, and it's in your inbox. So again, it's a case of where do you begin. So Cobra's report begins with the understandable disillusionment of the still struggle. We're still struggling to reach critical mass when required. Never mind every month. That's certainly not happening. I know I hear stories of Jared Rand's group reaching 20 million or some astronomical figure like that. And with all due respect to Jared Rand and the people that report him those sorts of numbers, it's very much a foregone conclusion that if that were the case, we would have had the event long ago, and it wouldn't be such a struggle. Anyway, the words, "We have reached critical mass, albeit barely." That's not just a clinical statement. I can see the energy coming out of those two words, albeit barely, that he's really disillusioned and blowing off a little bit of steam there. like many of us are, like I was with the first episode for this year's show. And anyway, of course, the 144K is absolutely determined to finally manifest the big breakthrough and final resolution with this still existing big problem, which is the struggle to reach critical mass with any reliability and consistency as well. Because at the moment, the year 2020, the starseed population is averaging one critical mass meditation per year. All right, that's the average. That's why I tell everyone, don't complain that we're not free yet, because there you are. The whole point of the 6 critical elements to a successful starseed group or meditation group is specifically designed to solve that very problem. And it's not, just about how to prevent infiltration and kickback and advanced mass meditations and so forth. It's how to accelerate planetary liberation, period. And, without each of those, based, again, referencing the 6 critical elements, without each of those 6 critical pieces to the puzzle in place, it will always be a struggle. And we're always going to have to sweat it out to reach critical mass on those crucial days, instead of what we're supposed to be manifesting by now, which is reliable and consistent critical mass meditations with ease, without a worry, monthly, each month. Many would say each week, and I wouldn't disagree with that, but let's shoot for every month first, and then we'll get to every week. Those 6 pieces of the puzzle are there for a reason. You may want to investigate that. The course is there in the members area, of course. So, you want solutions, faster liberation, there it is. It's all there in the members area. So, he sort of clarifies and confirms with the exponential growth of the so-called bubbles of heaven. That's great news, because it means there's places now that are anomaly free, which can include your own house. If the EMF in your house is on the low side, that is. You might have a smart meter on your smart meter guard on your smart meter, but just on the other side of the fence, what does your neighbour have? And you can ask for their permission to put a smart meter guard. I snuck over and just stuck one on my neighbour's smart meter guard, and it's still there because they think that the electrical company put it there. I put a smart meter guard on several Airbnbs that I've been to. There's things you can do. Anyway, it's a little, I digress. All this means that things can go better, smoother and faster. It also means goddess energy can get into these places and stay there, not get moved out. And these places can be true havens, not 100% safe, because higher level entities can still get in them, but it's now very unfriendly to them. And that was clearly not the case in the past 26,000 years. Now, Cobra also specifies that means light will grow exponentially faster and faster on the surface of the planet, right? Not the upper atmosphere, not sublunar orbit, not 100 meters up, not underground, but right here on the ground. And that will give more and more relief to the smashed up ground crew that we are. Now, this is not to imply you can get away with not doing your 20-minute morning clearing before starting your day. You won't get away with that, because, they can still attack, but the water is getting warm, which suits us, not them. they are going to increasingly be in enemy territory, not us. And that's huge as in huge. And the punchline is, and this is probably the most important part of Cobra's whole report, we have now officially entered into the last phase before the event. So to make sure no one just takes that at face value and really get what that means, with, again, I'm going to use conventional military 3D analogies to best explain things. In any war, it's won in stages. So, for example, in World War II, before the D-Day landings in Normandy can take place, the Battle of the Atlantic, the naval war, had to be won. And then the Allies had to gain what they call air superiority in the air over most of Europe. You know, those two things needed to be achieved before they can land the ground forces on the beaches of Normandy and work and liberate beautiful France. So it's in stages. All right, my thing comes with, of course, many of you grid workers certainly understand that a lot of this is sequenced. And great news, great news. Yes, it's been hard, but we made it. Now, the likely time period in which the last layer of plasma toplet bombs will be removed and what the biggest deciding factor is in cutting this time in half, that's important to not gloss over that as well. So Cobra reports that all layers of plasma toplet bombs have been removed except the last one. You know, obviously, huge breakthrough right there. That's really happy news. So what about the last layer? Now, again, we have to think in terms of timelines. All right. On the current timeline, it will take all of 2020 to remove the last layer. So that then begs the question, and again, you've got to ask the right questions, react to things the right way. So in this case, how do we halve that, right? Simple. Critical mass, advanced mass meditations every month, not once a year. Now, think about it. The last critical mass meditation before this January's one, right, was January the 21st, 2019. And you saw how much of a game changer that one was, right, where the cosmic central race was able to be brought into the picture as a result, among other things. So imagine we had such mass meditations each month. Yeah, that's how you clear all remaining plasma toplet bombs fast. So I'm not going to give up on promoting the 6 critical elements to a successful meditation and starseed group so that people really get all the missing pieces needed to get any starseed group doing such massive, well-designed mass meditations every month, reliably and consistently, not once a year. Okay, and that's obviously has to be one of our goals and obligations for this year to manifest that. And believe me, the event is a non-issue, which it largely already is a non-issue. We just, again, need to halve that time again, bring it closer, bring more stability to this rough transition. So, another great news, you know, Cobra reports all Chimera that were living in physical spider bodies in underground bases have been successfully removed. Now, since that's been completed and disclosed by Cobra, I can say, where was it? It was 24 hours, and I'm not claiming anything here. At the very least, it helped. So just be aware of that. I'm not making any claims here because I'm not 100% sure I'm certain. I'm certain. But about 24 hours before Cobra posted this post, there was a Chimera clearing centric energy work that was done with the teams about 24 hours before Cobra's post, and the focus was on below ground and above atmosphere Chimera bases. Many of them were concealed, especially the ones above the atmosphere and sublunar orbit that were concealed. You know, the way the LOC, Lunar Operations Command, of the SSP is concealed. For those of you who remember Corey Good's story of flying around the crater where the LOC is, and all of a sudden it appeared before it was invisible, a lot of that kind of stuff. That was a huge session. It took place this Monday, and yeah, it was mostly focused on final clearing of the Chimera bases and the Chimera themselves. And of course, across all alternate and parallel timelines and all alternate and parallel universes as well. That's important, because part of the issue was that the high level darkness, which is Chimera, Argos, Plasma Octified, they do have the ability and have had the ability and certainly have used their ability to contact and communicate across timelines and universes. Not necessarily travel there, but, you know, see what's going on. It's kind of like remote view sort of thing. And which was interesting. That was discovered in Monday's Chimera Clearing Energy session. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail in a minute as to what's left of the Chimera on the surface. But this is huge, because Chimera, from their bases below ground and above ground, above the atmosphere and sublunar orbit and near Earth orbit, they were doing a lot of damage. You know, as FM 144 explained a couple of posts ago. You went into some detail. Anyway, and just to clarify before I move on, their physical spider bodies, you know, they're not spider in the organic sense. They were technological nanites that looked like fluid from far away, but all these tiny nanites, they were made out of that. One more important detail about the Chimera-centric energetic clearing with the teams. One thing that the Chimera had was these, well, basically it was a technology. They were spheres, basically. Little spheres that ranged in size from a golf ball to a marble to a basketball. And there were many layers, and each one formed a grid, and there were many layers of these grids. And what these things did is they actually beamed codes that formulate the matrix. You know, the codes that you see in the actual Matrix movies, but also the various combinations of ones and zeros that make up this simulation that we call the Matrix, what we see with our physical eyes. They were beaming that down to and even below the Earth's surface from high altitudes, and there were many layers of this, right? You know, many backup layers, and they were, I don't know if they were beaming it just into the external matrix, and then our eyes would see these particular codes that would beam, and our visual cortex would then create so-called reality from that, or that we're beaming it straight into our brains, which would scramble what our eyes would actually see, skew it somewhat, and so that when those codes reach our visual cortex would put a particular picture together that's only partly true or skewed. I don't know if it was one or the other. For some reason, I'm not getting a clear read on that, But that's what these little spheres were doing. And they were beaming these things from, I don't know, about 20 or 30,000 feet above the surface, all the way up to and beyond the stratosphere. They were in sublunar orbit as well, and beaming down these particular codes that then formulated or created the matrix, what we saw with our physical eyes. Many layers of it as well. And that's been cleared as well. At least based on what I'm told. So that was one of the many layers of garbage that was cleared on the Chimera focused or Chimera centric energetic clearing with the teams a few days ago. Not the one this Monday. That was mainly about the plasma octopi, reptilians, and every other goblin and poltergeist you can think of. There was another one. So that is just profound, great news, folks. Really, take the time, take a few minutes to really rejoice in that. Now, of course, Cobra goes on to say there is still a small group of plasma Chimera spiders, and they are in the last stage of removal. So we're almost there. Huge news. The physical Chimera group, so this is the surface Chimera group that are mostly in human form, is very small, but still quite strong, although it has suffered a significant loss of power in the days around the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And make no mistake, folks, as an important side note, the 144K mass meditations that we did on the 21st of December, 25th of December, and the 10th of January, which preceded the main, more widely known mass meditation that Cobra called for, guaranteed that was seriously needed to enable and help guarantee the success of the 11th January mass meditation, the Age of Aquarius activation mass meditation. I want to make sure you're fully aware of that, because that very much is the case. Again, it just underscores the critical role that the 144K plays, and that's not big noting us, it's just a clinical observation, an impartial observation. All right, let me see here. So yes, they suffered a big loss in the days around the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Now, and it confirms that there is a small main Chimera group. So what's left of the Chimera group, the main one, is still present in DARPA, and the previous director of DARPA, Stephen Walk, has just resigned, effectively on January 10th, the day of the lunar eclipse just preceding our activation. But it was preceding the activation, the Age of Aquarius activation, the main mass meditation, but it didn't precede the 144K mass meditation on that very day, the 10th of January. And many of you who participated in that particular mass meditation, you know how profound it was. Not a coincidence. We can say at the very least it helped. Let's just put it that way. It's hard to say how much credit we can claim, but it certainly helped. So, there's some Chimera presence on the surface, with the main presence in DARPA and a smaller presence in the US Space Force. And I'll get into the whole US Space Force thing in a minute. The last remaining Chimera between now, but mostly in the last 6 to 12 months leading up to the event, will be in human form, on the surface mostly. All right, and they're composed of nanites, just like their spider versions, also known as nanomites. Just like John Connor, the John Connor character in the second last Terminator movie that just where he got taken up by the Skynet AI. Go watch that movie. Watch that Terminator movie. That taken over version of John Connor is exactly what we're dealing with, and what the White Hats are dealing with when it comes to the Chimera in that so-called human form. That movie is classic Cabal disclosure. I can't remember I don't know if it's called Terminator Genesis or what. I know there's an all-female cast of the most latest Terminator movie, and this is not the one I'm referring to. I'm referring to the one before that. I think it came out in 2016. That's a movie to watch. That John Connor in that movie, that's exactly what the Chimera, the form that the Chimera are in. So that's a good one to watch if you haven't seen it already. And there's also disclosure about alternate or parallel timelines in that movie as well. Good disclosure, in other words, good training. So watch that. I think it's Terminator Genesis. Don't quote me on that, but it's the second last one. Anyway, so Cobra says that US Space Command is not disclosure, and some erroneously believe it was created as a Chimera defense force against the Galactic Confederation. So here's a little bit of clarification with that one. That was the original plan and goal by the Cabal and Chimera for that matter. But what Cobra doesn't mention is that something happened about 2-3 years ago. All right. The US Space Force is nothing more than disclosure of the Air Force's long existing lower level SSP, what David Wilcock referred to as MIC SSP, which is Military Industrial Complex SSP. So not the main SSP that has, that was formerly Solar Warden, and technologies and craft that at this point, or for some time actually, has far exceeded most ETs out there, both positive and negative. That's not it. That's a high level SSP. The US Space Force, which is, again, the Air Force lower level SSP, that's already existing. It's just disclosure of that to a degree. And yes, it was originally planned by the Chimera to use that as its defense against the Galactic Confederation and the SSP, in the main positive SSP, which is a former Solar Warden. But for fans of David Wilcock and Corey Good, and people that have been watching Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia.com, you'll know that an Air Force general that was, part of the top brass in this lower level Air Force SSP, they eventually discovered, they thought they were at the top of the pyramid as far as all things SSP are concerned, Secret Space Program. And then through Corey Good, kidnapping Corey Good twice, that particular Air Force general that Wilcock and Corey Good called Zig, because of his goatee and looks somewhat similar to Sigmund Freud, he discovered after much investigation that, not only were they, to put it in his words, just the effing Coast Guard, and they discovered that the main SSP program was far bigger, far more advanced than what he was involved in. On top of that, he discovered the Chimera and the negative factions, the Cabal, and the combination of that left the top brass of the Air Force's lower level SSP, what's now being called US Space Force, it left them completely pissed, with a capital P. All right. Believe me, and they felt used and abused. They felt tricked in a big way. And the thing about our military generals is, although they're generally they're very functional, highly functional in a 3D sense, they are quite, not necessarily in a negative way, but anyway, they are quite egotistical as well. They have a very big, healthy, big sense of itself, which is good. It's important to have to be connected with your bigness, but imagine upsetting, tricking, and using for many decades, someone like General George Patton. All right, just imagine that for a moment, and you can imagine the reaction. All right, you don't want to piss off people like that. Yes, they're not at the top of the pyramid in the overall power structure, but they still have a lot of power. They're connected to their bigness. And you don't want to use people like that, and another good example of that is a lot of old veteran senior CIA agents that were involved in the illicit drug trade since the 60s, because they honestly thought, they were told by the cabal that they're doing this for freedom and democracy against the communist totalitarian regimes of the Eastern Bloc, and then when they found out that the whole Cold War thing was a complete fake out, although it did become real in the late 70s when the Tsarist Russian Christian group kicked out the cabal out of Russia. Anyway, but that's another story. When they found out that they were just being used, they got royally pissed. And that's when they started helping the White Dragon Society, Fulfors groups, and basically defected to the Earth Alliance. And again, the Earth Alliance or White Hats, the majority of them are made up of people like that. Anyway, so since then there was a large-scale defection of the lower level Air Force controlled SSP, which is separate from the Navy, the naval SSP. So just keep that in mind as well. It gets a little convoluted, I know, but bear with me. And Michael Sala reported, a year or two ago, that this same so-called Space Force, as it's called now, which is just this lower level SSP of the Air Force, Michael Sala confirmed and reported in an article about it 1 or 2 years ago that there has been a rebellion, an Air Force rebellion against the cabal. And when that happened, the Chimera and the cabal lost control of this particular lower level SSP force that they were going to use originally against the Galactic Confederation. And again, for those of you who've stuck with the story, you know that Zig is now a casualty. He was killed in a meeting where fake representatives of the high level SSP were trying to get a particular hard drive that had a full list of all the Dark Fleet's bases and numbers and ships and where they were and so forth, mostly on Earth. But good old Zig smelt a rat, carried hid the real hard drive that had all that critical intel with, and gave them, and walked into the meeting with a fake, well, with a hard drive that didn't have that information, just any old hard drive, because he suspected something, and sure enough, his suspicion was right. Unfortunately, he lost his life. So there's another, I don't like to use the word martyr, but another hero who unfortunately has pretty much already been forgotten. And in honor of such heroes, that's how I took on, well, part of the reason why I took on the name Unknown Light Warrior. It's sort of in the same vein of the Unknown Soldier. So that's the deal there with the US Space Command. So Cobra's info, you know, it's a little out of date with that and a little incomplete, but most of his intel is still good. Now, by the way, it's massively exciting news that he reports that the Galactic Confederation is taking over sublunar space and now also near Earth orbit. And this reminds me of the confirmation by Cobra when I interviewed him last January for that mass meditation back then, when I asked him, will active, and that's the key word here, active starseeds get private physical contact and reunion well before the event or the main disclosure, you know, as soon as it is safe enough to do so? And he confirmed, yes, that is the case. And if that doesn't keep you going or motivate you, I don't know what will. All right. Now let's get into the whole prime directive thing. It's certainly important enough to clear up and get clarity on. So the prime directive in and of itself is actually true, not false, but with a critical piece deliberately left out, you know, by the Archons and Chimera and so forth, which made all the difference. So the part left out by the Archons and or Chimera is, you know, right, non-interference. That is true. You're not allowed to interfere unless Galactic Codex is violated. If there's an overt or covert takeover of a planet that has some kind of civilization on it, non-interference is thrown out the window. It makes it null and void, and positive forces can intervene and as much as they have to liberate the planet. And that's that. Again, it's that 20%, you know, part of the information left out that makes all the difference. So that's the deal there. Now, moving on to the next point, why the sudden and brutal form of the financial collapse, as opposed to, you know, a more quiet and gradual form of financial collapse, might be a good thing if we do our job as active starseeds and certain things are in place. So, Cobra is right. It will be a sudden and all at once kind of crash, but it may not be brutal unless you're in the finance industry or have money in the stock market, of course. Then it will be brutal. But the point is, there's a particular timeline. Again, think in terms of timelines. There's one particular timeline where the financial collapse will occur when the Earth Alliance has everything ready, and the ensuing financial reset can be performed within 48 hours of the collapse, instead of a very long and brutal 2 weeks, for example. Now, our responsibility and duty is to make sure Earth reaches that timeline. And I don't need to get into or repeat myself as to how we do that. Advanced and consistent monthly critical mass meditations. So, and we are getting there. All right, now there's some important distinctions that need to be made public about how, you know, it wasn't, I mean, there was a lot of reptilians that have been kicked out of their hidden places or not so hidden places. And this is important to be able to explain. There's all sorts of entities. Basically, almost every kind of entity you can think of, that's what's been kicked up, even more so than the reptilians. It's not just reptilians, and they are also getting cleared, especially after this Monday's clearing event. Now, really, all right, there's been 3 big mass energetic events or mass clearings after the mass meditation, or the mass meditations of January 10th, 11th, and 12th. All right, there's been a lot going on since then. Really, it's mostly the plasma octopi, the plasma archons that have been getting cleared en masse since the January 10th, 11th, and 12th mass meditations. And as of this Monday, particularly Monday night, West Coast time, so Tuesday pretty much everywhere else in the world, all the lower level entities of all kinds have been getting stung big time by the incoming light as a result of this Monday's clearing, which again was the Chimera centric clearing, and I'll get into that in a moment. And these entities are of all kinds, all right? So many of them are more like, so it's not just reptilians and Draco reptilians. It's more like, I mean, it is them, a lot of them, but it's more like the stereotypical type ghosts, goblin, warlocks, demonic types, witches type, poltergeist types. You know, it's been them as well, okay, not just reptilians. So those guys, they're lower level, mid-level type entities. You know, they have some intelligence, but they're much more one-track minded. They're, you know, which means they operate in more of a one specific way, you know, chasing after specific types of negative emotions to get their fix. You know, they don't have the extreme intelligence that archons, senior demons, and octopi have. So in terms of, you know, this Monday night that just went till about Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday night US time, so went into Wednesday morning in many parts of the world, if you were having a rough time, that's the reason. So almost on a weekly basis, every few days, to sum this all up with a bit more clarity, I guess. It's hard to explain all this in an orientated way, so apologies for that. Since the mass meditations on the 10th, 11th, and 12th January, and partly because of the success of those 3 particular mass meditations and their astrological effects, of course, the all remaining senior level darkness has been cleared, and after each of those clearings, you know, lower level, mid-level entities have been freaking out and being, you know, getting stung by the incoming light and escaping and coming up, bashing into people's fields and that kind of thing. So there was, again, after even just a couple of days after the 10th, 11th, and 12th of January events, there was an archon-centric or archon-focused energetic clearing. Then a few days after that, there was a Chimera centric energetic clearing. Then a few days after that, there was a plasma octopi, who are also very high level, centric clearing, and with the plasma octopi clearing, there was the rest of it. There was focused on clearing reptilian, non-physical reptilians, and all those different types of negative entities. Poltergeist, warlocks, demonic, goblin types. All right, there was a lot of those, and that's what's been happening up until yesterday. That's what's been happening. You'll notice that today the energies are comparatively more calmer. They're still being cleared, but it's comparatively more calmer today, which is Thursday afternoon US time. So we're entering Friday morning everywhere else, and that'll be the reason. So the reason why Cobra only reported or only saw reptilians, trillions of reptilians. Now, there's not trillions and trillions of reptilians. There are trillions and trillions of negative entities of all kinds. Reptilians themselves, they number in the hundreds of billions, because we're talking about plasma and etheric plane. All right, there's sort of two whole worlds, two whole planets in a way. But the majority, a good 80% of it, were the aforementioned ghosts, goblins, and poltergeist types, and octopi to a significant degree. The majority were that, not necessarily reptilians. Now, reptilians themselves, they did number in the hundreds of billions, definitely. But the trillions and trillions, all right, it was negative entities of all kinds that I just mentioned. Now, it's important to explain why Cobra saw only reptilians. All right, so there's mainly two reasons for that. When we see psychically or look into the non-physical, we generally tend to only see, and there's a way to achieve mastery over this, by the way, so just keeping that in mind, but we generally see either what we fear the most or what we want and desire the most. That sort of affects our psychic filters. And Cobra, he's Pleiadian. That's his galactic background. All right. Now, the arch nemesis and primary rival of the Pleiadians is actually the reptilians. Okay. Which is quite a compliment to the Pleiadians, because Pleiadians, they're not, certainly not most of them, they're not a warrior race. All right. And I was a bit surprised by this as well when I inquired about it. With the reptilian Draco Empire being so brutal and, well, draconian and warrior-like, you would think their arch nemesis would be Arcturian type races, because they're also warrior and highly advanced, but obviously of the light equivalent of that. You would think that, and that's what I thought, but it's not quite the case. The galactic level arch nemesis of the Draco reptilians is actually the Pleiadians, Syrians, Vegans, Lyrans, Procyon, and quite a few others. Andromedans, I would say, but particularly the Pleiadians and the Syrians. They're the arch nemesis of the reptilians. Both races, albeit in opposite ways, obviously, both races are, highly spiritual, but both depend heavily on technology, to do what they do. The Arcturians, they're a comparatively older race, much more advanced, more use, comparatively speaking, I mean, they use technology as well, but they more rely on organic technology or spiritual technology, spirituality, not just technology as well. They don't have the same level of dependence on technology as what the Assyrians and Pleiadians do. And so the arch nemesis, or equal opposite rival of the Arcturians, is actually more like the Chimera and Archon types that are always, higher up the food chain than what the Draco Reptilians are. All right, so that's why Cobra saw reptilians mostly, because they're the rival, the big main rival of the Pleiadians. Now, and really that's who they've been dealing with most of the time. Pleiadians and Sirius don't really deal too much with Archons and Chimera. They deal mostly with reptilians. Now, the other reason why when Cobra looked onto the non-physical planes, all he saw was reptilians is in the mid-90s, around about 1995, pretty much the entire Pleiadian star system and Pleiadian star nation got massively attacked, an all-out attack by the Draco Reptilians. And that war lasted approximately 10 years in terms of Earth linear time, massively traumatized pretty much the entire Pleiadian collective, and they needed some time to heal from that. For those of you who really done your homework, you know that the Pleiadians sometime in the mid-90s were ready to make their move, and the Archon Chimera invasion of 1996 was part of the response to that. There wasn't just that invasion here on Earth, but there was also a massive invasion and attack on the Pleiadians and Pleiadian star system themselves. Anyway, that traumatized the Pleiadian collective, which, because Cobra is Pleiadian at the energetic soul level, that trauma affected Cobra's psychic filters, right? So that's why, although it was only about 20% of all these non-physical entities that got kicked up in the past couple of weeks as a result of our successes, although 80% of them were negative entities of all kinds, with 20% approximately being actual reptilian non-physical entities. That's why all this was reptilians. It was partly coming from that collective Pleiadian trauma. He was, being the main nemesis of the Pleiadian star nation and race, which is the reptilians. That's what they fear the most. That's what he feared the most, and that's all he saw. So I hope that makes sense. All right. And the good news is it's settling down, begin to settle down. It really was crazy. And that's the irony when we have huge, massive breakthroughs and mass clearings, it kicks up that which was deeply hidden, and when it comes to clearing all remaining Archons, all remaining plasma octopi, all remaining Chimera, all these, and some other types of darkness, such as black plasma entities, really high-level stuff, they don't just have to be cleared from this planet and this timeline. They have to be cleared from alternate and parallel timelines and universes, and they also have to be cleared from what Corey Good calls temporal bubbles. So these are kind of like little portals in a way, that are hidden in all sorts of different octaves or frequencies within a given plane of existence, and many of them are deeply concealed. Some of them are as small as the size of a quantum particle. Others are the size of a basketball, and they could be wherever on a whole planet. That's a big, and that's a lot. That's why if you don't connect with your iron presence and work with even higher senior levels of light, respectively speaking, in our case beyond multiversal beings, yeah, planetary liberation will take forever, no doubt. So again, this is why we need to think differently, think at a higher level, and think of new ideas to liberate this planet faster. And, you know, that's what 144K HQ is all about. Solutions. So I hope that sort of helped and gave you a good taste of, you know, the overall scheme of things in the off-world realm. So that's the extra, from my perspective, the more holistic intel report of these last 2 weeks. What have we got? This 23rd. Yeah, the last 2 weeks. No doubt. And I'm looking forward to FM 144's take on things as well. I expect he or she will report probably sometime this week or next week with extra information that either I or Cobra may not know about or have missed to complement this profound mosaic of intel and consciousness, even better. And FM 144, if you're listening, we're certainly looking forward to your next post. Now, with regards to the whole Facebook group fiasco at this point, all I'm going to say is that Cobra was referring to. All I'm going to say to that is take a look at each group. Take a look at which one provides more value, more spiritual, energetic, emotional stimulation and upliftment for you, and just go with that. Okay, just judge them both respectively on their individual merit and just go with that. All right, it's not my job to tell you what to do, and that's the best way to judge any group. Which one resonates the most? Which one makes you feel better, more confident as well, and just go by that. And you know, the information that Cobra provided about, you know, formerly known as Cobra Etheric Liberation, I think it's now called Working Together for the Etheric Liberation of Gaia, or whatever it's called now. You know, it wasn't hijacked. I know that much. I can confirm that much because it's by the same person who actually set it up, who was a senior member of Cobra's group at that original Laguna group. That individual, they're the ones that set it up, so it wasn't hijacked. You know, that's not quite the case. And quite simply, that person, understandably, just couldn't bring themselves to shut the whole thing down and say goodbye to 15,000 people and leave them hanging there like that. You know, that's the deal there. So don't judge anything. Don't judge either group. Just take a look at one and judge it. Make your judgment call based on merit. You know, Cobra's information, as I've explained so far in this intel report, it's a little incomplete, and that's all I'll say about it. All right. So, moving on to the geo and exopolitical news analysis. Really interesting stuff. I'm only going to get into some brief points about the geopolitical news on the physical plane and surface at the moment. There's, again, Russia and apparently Japan have made their big moves. All right, allegedly. Let's just say that for now, although with Russia, I think it's very much the case. I'm not sure about Japan, where they nationalised their central bank. And when you see countries formerly under the control of the cabal, including the financial system through the Rothschilds, when you see countries of any significant size and industrial power and military power start to nationalise their central banks, that's when you know we're really close, okay? Now, P3 Freemasons, Fulford reports P3 Freemasons notified Fulford that Dmitry Medvedev, the Russian Prime Minister, was removed because he was actually an alien. All right. Now, I can understand that's hard for Ben Fulford Ben Fulford's mind to compute, but many of you know that primarily Dracos, higher level Dracos, and or Chimera, they're able to make themselves take out a given power figure who's perfectly good and human, take them out, and while with the case of the Dracos, they use that telepathic overlay that David Wilcock, had personal experiences with and explained, where they look perfectly human, but they have that telepathic overlay, and if that overlay is removed or deactivated by the entity, voila, you see a reptilian. Now the Chimera, as far as my awareness is concerned, they use that John Connor type nanobots kind of thing, and that's how they look human. And unfortunately for Dmitry, that he seems to have been taken out at some point in the past few years by either a Draco or Chimera. And yeah, effectively becoming a double agent. Obviously that's happened in various parts of the, Western Europe, North America, China. It's happened to some people, and then they're being weeded out, don't worry. So that's the deal with Medvedev. Yes, that is true. So technically, that's right. They P3 Freemasons are being truthful when they say that Medvedev was removed because he was actually an alien. That was the case, probably either Draco or Chimera. So Bank of Japan nationalised, and the Rothschilds, as well as the Rockefellers, have been removed from control of this country. That could very well be true, but let's wait and see. It's great news if that is the case, because Japan was a major cash cow for the cabal, and so hopefully it's true, and it could be true. Let's just wait and see. Okay. Again, British royal family sources confirm this. We'll see. The British royal family, although there's positive members there, they still don't exactly have the best reputation in the world for obvious Luciferian reasons. Great news with what the Navy has decided to do, and this is a good sign that the Navy is well and truly white hat controlled and free of any double agents or infiltration. They decided to name their newest carrier, and I'm really happy about this, with someone with a military background, with past lives, that is, not this one. They decided to name their newest aircraft carrier after an African-American sailor instead of Bush Jr., Clinton, or Obama. And thank God for that. That would be such an insult and such a dishonor if any of these ships, let alone the newest aircraft carrier, was named after Bush Jr., Clinton, or Obama, the stereotypical cabal figures, even though they're only mid-level cabal. All right. And my last important main point for today is, again, I suppose really it's a cause for celebration. Yet again, more good news. Fulford reports, that it's had several sources that say that they found many children in cages and other horrors in some of these bases that are now being taken over or destroyed by the White Hats. Of course, this has been going on for years now. Japanese sources, quote, tell us that 14,000 Japanese children were being sold each year to the, what he calls, Khazarian Mafia, the Cabal. Now, that's just in Japan. FBI statistics show that 40,000 children go missing each year in the US. Many of them are now being rescued from cages in underground bases, Pentagon sources say. Again, this has been going on, for years, although the past 6 to 8 months in particular, since last June, it really has hit somewhat of a crescendo with the China Lake bases, Amazon bases, Sub-Saharan Africa bases being taken out. But it's been going on for a while. And that's a Pentagon confirmation as well. So, on a final note, we were told, and this is an important point that I want to raise to people's attention. He reports, as a final note, that Antarctica sources tell him that what is happening now on the surface of the planet is much more important. Okay, so this is a big deal if you break it down and read between the lines. By that Antarctica source saying that what's happening on the surface of the planet is much more important, it implies or says basically that what's happening underground or in the atmosphere and sublunar orbit is, comparatively speaking, less important. Therefore, that implies that the battle with above ground, meaning near Earth orbit, sublunar orbit, and below ground, is largely won and being mopped up. That's why he's saying what's happening on the surface is, and I quote, is much more important. What is, what's happening now on the surface of the planet is much more important. All right, notice the word now. So it seems, it's probably the most biggest statement of this whole episode, that all physical and non-physical, above ground and below ground clearings seem to be coming to a completion. There's probably still a bit more work to do in the coming couple of weeks or so. I'm not saying that there's going to be no more attacks. But it looks like it's being wound up, mopped up, finished up, a completion process. It could, take a few weeks, like I said, with above, above ground, below ground, both physical and non-physical. Hence that Antarctica source saying that what's happening now on the surface of the planet is now much more important. He wouldn't say that if things hadn't reached that stage. So understand that. In general, folks, great news, by Cobra, and, a little bit more clarification provided here as well at Ground Crew Command, with more complete information. And folks, if that doesn't motivate you and inspire you to just keep your head high, look after yourself, keep yourself strong, do what you need to do and keep on going, I don't know what else does. And congratulations to all of us. We've largely made it. We just have to complete the completion process or completion phase of planetary liberation. All right. It's like, World War II again, always a good analogy. When the war was very much over, but the Battle of Berlin was still crazy stuff with lots of casualties and horrors, even though the Wehrmacht was well and truly done with capital D, we're in that sort of situation. So still a lot of desperation, a lot of viciousness, but let's follow through with the completion process of this pre-event period. All right, that's the perspective to have moving forward. Heal yourself, love yourself, do what you need to do for yourself in the coming weeks, because we do have a rather interesting mass meditation, 144K mass meditation on, I think it's the Chinese New Year, on the 2nd of January. So 0202. You think the Luciferians are not going to try to make their last gasp attempt to save themselves on that date? Well, guess again. As always, 144K stands alone and will be there for humanity. So rest, relax, do enjoyable things, walk in nature, do your 20-minute clearing in the morning, do your weekly, 1 hour deep level healing clearing once a week consistently. That goes a long way. Of course, I'm going to be slightly biased and recommend the ICB, internal compression breakthrough.com, because you work with the same beyond multiversal light beings and your I am presence that really packs quite a punch in the most positive way to deal with whatever you haven't been able to really shut down, whatever's causing serious problems. And let's do it, folks. Well done, everybody. I salute every single one of you, and I'm sure more intel will come, but again, 80% of your focus inwards, only 20% of your focus is focusing on what needs to be on the external, on what needs to be healed and cleared. Other than that, 80% focus internally and on what you want. And that concludes a critical and inspiring, awesome episode of Ground Crew Command Radio, your weekly dose of motivation, inspiration to get you through the Archon Invented Work Week. This is your loving servant, the Unknown Light Warrior. Stay tuned, folks. 2020 is going to be intense, but in some respects, far more interesting and exciting. Let's do it. Let's finish the job.